Good morning, everyone. It's just about to be noon, so it's still morning. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule. So probably I have 20 minutes, and how I'm going to break the session is talk a little bit about IndiGram, journey of IndiGram, what investors want, as well as talk a little bit about the startup agri and food ecosystem along with government support. So, IndiGram's journey started way back in the year 2000. So, it's been a 20-year-old journey with multiple entities in agriculture and healthcare. I'll focus my discussions around agri and leave out the healthcare entities since it's an agri forum. So, we have four entities in the agri domain. First entity is AgriWatch, which is into market intelligence for non-perishable commodities. AgriWatch provides subscription-based reports to individual commodity traders, big commodity trading companies. They do crop cutting experiments for various clients. They also provide live market prices across all major markets in India, mainly on the non-perishable side. So paddy, millets, pulses, oilseeds, spices, etc., etc. The second entity is ISAP, which is Indian Society of Agribusiness Professionals. ISAP has been incorporated in the year 2001, so it's been 19 years. They've managed to create a network of 500,000 farmers across India, a lot of work around agricultural extension, which is integrated farming solutions, creation of FPOs, water and sanitation, renewable energy, low-cost housing. They've covered roughly about 70% of Indian geographies over these 19 years, 20 states, with close to about 1,600 employees. So a lot of work around training and mobilizing smallholder farmers, what needs to be grown, where it needs to be sold, etc., etc. So, and IndiGram Labs is the third entity, which is an incubator accelerator, which was started roughly about 4 years back, with about 40 startups in the agri and food domain. All kinds of startups we have, right from agri-tech companies. Within agri-tech, there is precision ag, digitization of land farms, vertical, semi-vertical indoor farms, IoT in dairy, IoT in fisheries, marketplace models around livestock and farm mechanization, organic food companies, food processing consumer brands, etc., etc. So we've covered the entire gamut. We provide access to seed funding, access to IndiGram infrastructure, help them scale up quickly, and also help them raise the next round of investment. So that's pretty much about IndiGram Labs Foundation. We also have a social media, very wide social media network in the form of IAP, which is Indian Agricultural Professionals. It's one of the largest network for agri professionals in India, close to 312,000 members already on Facebook. So this is a not-for-profit initiative, and during the times of COVID, it makes all the more sense for people to enroll into this platform. The idea is to leverage the network, and the ecosystem players there are basically farmers, FPOs, food processors, agri-entrepreneurs, startups, policymakers. So you have the entire gamut of ecosystem players. So I would urge everyone to be a part of the IAP group as well. So that's pretty much about IndiGram. Now coming to what investors want. So basically, it's pretty much the same in terms of what all investors want. When you talk about institutional investors, they look at asset light model, capital efficient model, your ability to solve a large problem, and where there is paying customers in place. So there should be paying customers, whether your paying customer is a farmer or a corporate. There needs to be paying customers. You need to have the ability to solve a large problem, and so basically, in one of the investor sessions, I came across a quote saying that institutional capital or investors' money is like jet fuel. You put it behind a jet, it flies, and if you put it behind a Ford, it blasts. So you need to figure out the kind of business model you have, whether it's a jet or a Ford. So that's what it is. So. Last 5 years, there's been a growing trend as far as the investments are concerned. Every passing year, it's been increasing. 2019 has been a phenomenal year for investments in agri and food. And with COVID and the current scenario, it seems that obviously next 5 to 6 months is going to be a lull. But what investors, the feelers which we get is the business models which are around discretionary spending will take a halt, and the ones which are under the essential categories like healthcare, agri is going to see a jump. The promising things which we see in the agri and food vertical is also that the generic VCs, venture capitalists, have started looking at this sector very seriously. So we do see a whole lot of new investors coming into the space. So, which is a very good sign for the ecosystem in large. So now coming to the trends in the agri-tech startup space, there have been more than 500 active agri-tech startups in the last 5 years, as per various reports published. Our assessment says there's going to be more than 1,000 because there are a lot of startups which are not registered under DIPP, as well as not a part of any accelerator or incubator. There are a lot of startups in the rural grassroots area as well. So our estimate is more than 1,000 startups are there in the agri and food ecosystem. In the kind of innovations, agri innovations they are doing can broadly be categorized under four categories. So one is basically around the market linkage for farmers by building demand-driven supply chains. The other one is enabling access to high-quality inputs, be it offline, online, or omni-channel, by providing them the right inputs at the right time, right price, right quality. Third is basically interventions in the supply chain by providing real-time data, be it through satellites, through drones, through mobile phones, or through spectrometer, etc. And the fourth is basically innovative post-harvest solutions to reduce losses. So a lot of startups, be it off-grid refrigeration using solar, diesel, or biomass, solutions around food traceability, fortification, and also development of alternate proteins, etc., which we yet to see in India. So pretty much these are the four categories, and then there are subcategories within this. So earlier, when you talk about agri, we were talking about the white revolution, green revolution, then came horticulture. The future is of digital agriculture, so we see everything slowly and steadily going to be digitized. In terms of the possible interventions which we could seek from the government and the other stakeholders to see a jump in this space, is basically there are 3 or 4 things which needs to be done. One is open source digital platform AgriStack. So a lot of startups spend a lot of time building data, and for AI and machine learning to work, there needs to be sufficient data. So there needs to be an open source AgriStack in place where the farmers are tagged to the respective farms, and the ecosystem players can actually, and the farmers can access all the schemes of the governments, banks, insurance companies. There can be input buying and selling, as well as effective market linkage on the output side. The other is focusing on training and capacity building of micro entrepreneurs in different rural areas as well. That's the second one. Third is we need access to funds for pilots and prototype for startups as well, because who takes the cost of the pilot is again a big challenge. And the fourth is a lot of capacity building on the farmer side in terms of creation of FPOs, more infrastructure on the ground in terms of sorting, grading stations for validation of the activities for effective market linkages. So in terms of the trends, 2019, like I said, has been a phenomenal year for startups. With you hear big stories of ninja carts of the world being funded. So majority of the funding has gone there. Last 5 years, we've seen an increase in the trend, although the quantum of capital is still very low compared to the other sectors like consumer internet, e-commerce, logistics, but still it is growing at a steady pace. And I think in times to come, we'll see a lot more investment in this space. Most of the funding has gone towards the supply chain enabled innovations, be it removing of intermediaries or reducing wastage, digitization of supply chain, etc., etc. So coming to the challenges in the Indian agri ecosystem, both from a farmer's as well as an investor's perspective, right? So there are 6 to 7 challenges in this ecosystem. One is obviously the low landholding size. So most of the farmers in India are small and marginal farmers with a landholding size of less than a hectare or 2 hectares. So in order for farm mechanization to work or anything economical to work, that does not really happen with the small landholding. Second challenge is basically the return for the investors. The gestation period in agriculture is fairly long, so we need patient and impact investors to actually look at the sector to invest. The mindset needs to change when it comes to investing in agriculture vis-a-vis the other sectors. The third challenge from a startup perspective I see is in terms of talent retention. Obviously, the quality of talent in this sector is increasing, but Since the startups are not very well funded, how do you retain quality talent? They go to the other funded startups which are in different sectors. Fourth is the long gestation period, even for the farmers. Farmers need to build trust on these agri-tech companies to actually implement these technologies on the ground. So that takes a lot of time. This is a long gestation period. There is also a challenge of technology affordability. Since small and marginal farmers cannot afford most of these technologies, then what is the solution around it? So everyone is trying to crack their brains and figure out what needs to be done. And then there's a question of skill adaptability as well. How efficient are farmers in adopting technology? That is also something which is being discussed, and I guess things are improving in the right direction. And in terms of giving exit to investors, obviously the biggest challenge for investors is where do they get the exit. So obviously, unlike in the US where you have classic examples like Climate Corp being acquired by Monsanto, Blue River being acquired by John Deere, we're yet to see bigger exits happening in the agri-tech space to generate enough interest for the investors. So pretty much these 6 7 points are basically the challenges in the Indian agri ecosystem. So in terms of the startups being funded, there are 3 to 4 companies which have already raised upwards of $50 million in size. We have Ninja Cart closing in at about 148 million. That was the last news. There might be something coming up very soon. Samunti has gone about raising 87 million. Licious is at 64 million, and the list goes on and on. In terms of the trends, apart from those four broad categories, agri-tech investment themes, if I would call, there are farmer platforms, classic example being AgroStar or Dehad. Then there's rural fintech companies like Samuniti. Then there are agribusiness SaaS models like Cropin. You have precision ag companies like Tatasen, Fasal. Then there are B2B agri marketplaces. There are a whole lot of them. Ninja Card, Bijak, Jumbotail, Technifibers, Farmlay, now changed to Farmlay. Then there are farmer to consumer brands, companies like Licious, Country Delight, Fresh to Home, etc. Then there are solutions around post-harvest tech, companies like Stella Apps, Ecozen, IntelloLabs, etc. And then there is agri-biotech vertical as well, companies like String Bio. And then we're seeing a new trend in the innovative space, which is basically for alternate sources of protein. So we'll have to see how that goes. In terms of investments, 2019-20 closed at about close to $225 million, which is way higher than the previous years. In terms of the agri-tech investment landscape, obviously, earlier there were a very few handful of investors. Now we see even the generic investors taking interest. So there is a big pool of investors, I would say, and then there's a lot of deal making happening. So which is very promising. So you have the likes of Sequoia, Axel, Matrix, all these players coming in and investing in the space as well. Funding patterns in terms of where the bulk of the money has gone is mostly towards B2B agri marketplaces with Ninja Card dominating. So that's pretty much the trend which we see so far. So I think in terms of the space, what I would say is that since we fall under the essential category, it's a very promising space. And post this COVID era, we would see more investments happening because there'll be a shift from discretionary spending to spending in essential things. So agri is definitely going to see a boom when it comes to investments and also in terms of the number of startups coming up in this space. So that is pretty much from a startup agri and food ecosystem perspective. Now, probably another 2 minutes on the government support. So government has actually supported with a lot of incubators through various schemes. We have the TBI funded by Department of Science and Technology. Then there's Atal Incubation. Then Ministry of Biotech is also very active in the agri and food space. Plus then there is SIDBI fund of funds from an investment perspective for the next round. So, and then there are various other schemes like Invest India, Startup India. So there is enough support from the government, and I think there'll be more to come. So I think we are in a very good space, and I would encourage entrepreneurs who are looking to focus on the sector in terms of being entrepreneurs, it's a very good time to be in this space, and the future looks very bright.